Have you ever started a training program and in the first week you've got the excitement, enthusiasm and all the motivation in the world? You get out there, you get stuck into each training session, each run, each strength session, and they feel great. You go from strength to strength, the runs just seem to work, and then after that first week, it all just fizzles out. In this video we're going to look at some strategies to stop that training from fizzling out, to keep that ball rolling, to keep the momentum going. Right, day one, 8 weeks to go until the Kilcunda Half Marathon, first training session. And what better way than to start with a long run. Hot one today, 34 degrees Celsius. Had a moment where I debated about whether I should be doing that long run. And the answer is, yeah, I should. Play it safe, plenty of water, stick to the shade, pick the course to stay out of the fire danger areas. It's an 8-week training plan. I'm in my first week of it, and I want to get the most out of the 8 weeks, not just have 1 or 2 great weeks. The biggest problem we have is motivation. Motivation is overrated. I'm going to say that again. Motivation is overrated. When your training program is reliant on you having the motivation to go out and do the session, then you've set it up with a big weakness. Because motivation is extremely powerful when you have it. You can get the most amazing things done. You'll get things done that you didn't think you could do. But when your motivation is lacking, and you will always have some times when your motivation is lacking, well, what happens then? Set up your running plan so they're more reliant on habit rather than motivation. By using habits over motivation to get your training done, you come up with ways to make it easy to get your training started. Usually this requires a little bit of planning ahead. Get out your training gear the night before, set it up in the bathroom. Put the clock or phone, whatever you use for your alarm, just that little bit out of reach. You have to at least sit up, if not get out of bed to turn it off. I've got the threat of an angry wife if I let that alarm go for too long. Make yourself accountable to someone else. Set up some of your training sessions with others so that you've got that obligation for someone else. Sometimes the team approach, it's much more powerful than just when you're doing it for yourself only. The other problem with motivation is having too much of it, or so much that you train too hard in that first week. Don't fill up all your available training time with training. Give yourself a buffer. So just say you've got 10 hours each week, use only 7 or 8 of them. It gives you that buffer to adapt to other unexpected things in your life. Forces us to make the most of the time we have, rather than cramming everything in and just always pushing the limit on our life, not just our training load. And set it up correctly in that first week so that we can make the most of the whole training plan, not just the first week when our motivation is high. Right, time for work. How much do I up the training program? So today I've got my interval training. How much is too much? Right, today's intervals. 4 times 2 kilometers at critical velocity with 2 minutes jog recovery in between. It's a step up from my previous intervals. Right, that didn't go to plan. So instead of 4 times 2k, I did 3 times 2 and held a pace of about 4:20 per k. It was getting harder towards the end of that 3rd rep. I started the 4th one and I just couldn't get the speed up. Called it quits after 1k into it, and instead of averaging about 4:20 per k, I hit about 5 minutes. It's definitely my limits today. Not sure whether it's purely fitness or the heat affecting me a lot more. I have some guidelines for setting up that first week of a new training program. That first guideline is, how do we set the training load, the volume of training? Take your last 6 weeks of training, get rid of the biggest week, get rid of the smallest week, And with the remaining 4 weeks, average it out, and that gives a good guideline of where you should be in your first week of your new training program. Don't make every training session harder than you've been doing recently. At most, pick one run and make that run the harder run. For me, that's that interval session. One session to test what I've got. The most important thing you can do for that first week is set the habits, set the consistency, and aim to get in all the sessions, but don't have any session break you. If you feel like you're not doing enough, you'll have more for the weeks to come. You'll fuel that motivation for the oncoming weeks, and you'll get more out of the whole training program and not just that first week. If you miss a training session in that first week, don't try and catch it up. There is no point cramming the extra training in just because you didn't hit that session, didn't get that run, didn't get that mileage. Look at why you missed it. Is it your habits? Were you not organised? Something unexpected come up? Have you been overly optimistic in how much time you actually have to train? Use it as an opportunity to look at how your training fits in with the rest of your life, and you might need to make adjustments for the following weeks to make sure you get in what you need to. So that's the first week done. Despite this being a 7-day week, I'm mostly running my training on a cycle of 8 days, so nothing will ever quite line up to a normal Monday to Sunday week. Started up with a long run, 2.5 hours. I ended up covering 22 kilometres on that on some great trails in the heat, and then some strength training a little bit later in the day. Followed that up with 2 very easy days, which basically were very easy runs with CC. Then I was ready for the intervals, which we covered earlier in the video. Despite it not going to plan, it doesn't mean it was a bad session. What it means is I got the pacing wrong and my limit was earlier than I anticipated. There is nothing wrong with an interval session that doesn't go to plan as long as you put in the effort. A little bit of core strengthening work after that. Then another 2 easy days. That first easy day is more of a very low intensity run, but I extend the distance out. Make sure that I go over an hour, maybe about 75 minutes. And if I do have the time, I'll even extend that out to 90 minutes or even further, depending on how I feel. And I'll finish that with some strength training again. After that, it's night shift at work, and the next day I sleep for most of it. So it ends up just being a super easy run. And then I'm ready for that last session, tempo 8 kilometers. And these tempo runs aren't running on the flat as I had been doing over the last few weeks. This time I'm including trails, hills, some technical work, aiming to be faster over terrain that's going to match the race that's coming up. When I get a run in every day, when I get the consistency going, it's amazing how the kilometres really add up, especially when you're making the easy and the hard. Plugged in the distances, turns out it's 77 kilometres for the week, probably a little bit higher than I first anticipated. That's a week of training. I've got 7 more to go. Hopefully you got something out of this, understand a bit more of how motivation can drive you, but it can also be a problem. And before you watch the next video, enjoy some friends I met on one of my runs this week. Welcome to Australia.